This section is on averages, and there are three types of averages: arithmetic means, medians, and modes. In this section, you will learn how to find arithmetic means. You will learn how to find the value of an unknown score when given all the other scores and an average, and by average I mean an arithmetic mean in this case. You will also learn how to find medians and identify modes. The formula for computing an average is the average equals the sum of scores over the number of scores. In any problem in which you are asked to find an arithmetic mean or you are working with an arithmetic mean, always find the sum of scores first. Let's discuss more about finding the sum of scores. Suppose you want to find the average of your 4 algebra tests. The scores are 90, 100, 85, and 95. Your first step is to find the sum of scores. When you are given all of the scores that you need to know, you simply add the scores and divide by the number of scores. In this example, you would add 90, 100, 85, and 95. The sum of scores is 370. To find the average, divide the sum of scores by the number of scores. Therefore, the average is 370 divided by 4 equals 92.5. What you think of as an average is more specifically called an arithmetic mean. In this example, we're talking more about finding the sum of scores. And let's consider a case in which we don't know all the scores we need to know. Charlie's girlfriend Rhonda, a bright girl who spent too much time practicing her cheerleading, scored 48, 62, 59, and 74 on each of 4 algebra tests. What grade must she make on her 5th and last test in order to pass algebra with a D-? Assume that 60 is a D-. Here's the question. How do we find the sum of scores when we don't know all of the scores yet? Here's the answer. We look at the formula for finding an average. Recall that the average equals the sum of scores over the number of scores. This equation can be rearranged into the average times the number of scores equals the sum of scores. This idea is so important, I'm going to repeat it on another slide. The sum of scores equals the average times the number of scores. How to solve problems in which you don't know one of the scores. When you are given these types of questions on the SAT, find the sum of scores this way. Multiply the average you want to get by the number of scores. This will give you the sum of scores that you need. Let's go back to the Rhonda problem. And I'm repeating the problem. And remember, it's Charlie's girlfriend Rhonda, a bright girl who spent too much time practicing her cheerleading, scored 48, 62, 59, and 74 on each of 4 algebra tests. What grade must she make on her 5th and last algebra test in order to pass algebra with a D-? To find the sum of scores, multiply the average she wants, which is a 60, by the number of scores, which will be 5 after she takes her last test. Rhonda's sum of scores, therefore, is 60 times 5, which equals 300. Now that we know Rhonda's sum of scores is 300, we use the following equation to find the score she needs on her 5th test. Remember, we take her original 4 scores that we know, 48 plus 62 plus 59 plus 74, plus x, which is the unknown value of her 5th test. The equation simplifies to 243 plus x equals 300. Subtract 243 from both sides. When we do that, we get x equals 57. Therefore, Rhonda must score at least a 57 on her last test in order to pass with a D-. Review how to find an unknown score in an arithmetic mean problem. Multiply the average by the number of scores you will have. This gives you the sum of scores. Set up an equation. The sum of the scores you already know plus x equals the sum of scores. Add the scores you already know together. Subtract that sum from both sides of the equation. This will give you the unknown score. Example 2. How to find averages when you're using variables instead of numbers. The average of 4 numbers A, B, C, and D is 12. The average of C and D is 6. What is the average of A and B? Remember, in working these types of problems, a good first step is to find the sum of scores. The sum of scores for all 4 numbers is the average times the number of scores. The average is 12. We have 4 scores. The sum of scores is therefore 48. The sum of scores of C and D is its average times the number of scores, which is 6 times 2, which is 12. The sum of scores of A and B is the difference between the two figures above. Therefore, it's 48 minus 12 equals 36. The average of A and B is 36 divided by 2, which is 18. Introduction to weighted averages. If you have ever had a teacher who counted test grades more heavily than homework and quizzes, you have an intuitive idea of weighted averages. Weighted averages are typically used when computing grades. They are also used when finding an average speed for a trip when the speed has varied during that trip. Let's do an example with weighted test scores. In an SAT review, students took a practice math class. A table lists their scores. What is the average? The wrong way would be to add 480 plus 520 plus 540 plus 590 plus 610 plus 650 and divide by 6, which is the number of different scores, or 10, the number of students. This is wrong because we need to weight each score by the number of students who earned that score. The correct way is to weight each score by multiplying it by the number of students earning that score. How to solve the SAT score problem. To find the average, multiply each score by the number of students who earned that score. Add those values and divide by 10, which is the total number of scores. Look at the table on the left. One student scored 480, and we multiply 480, which is that score, times the number of students who earned that score, which is 1, and the weighted score is 480. 4 students scored 520. We multiply that score by the number of students who earned that score. 520 times 4 is 2,080. Similarly, 540 times 1 is 540. 590 times 2 is 1,180. 610 times 1 is 610. 650 times 1 is 650. We add all of those weighted scores, 480 plus 2,080 plus 540 plus 1,180 plus 610 plus 650. The sum of scores is 5,540. Dividing by 10 gives an answer of 554, which is the average score for that test. Example 4. Charlie drives to SeaWorld at 90 miles per hour for 2 hours. Then Rhonda drives at 60 miles per hour for 3 hours. Charlie's mother closes her eyes because she is too afraid to look. What is the average rate for the entire trip? The wrong way to solve this problem is to add 90 and 60 and divide by 2. This would give an average of 75 miles per hour. This is wrong because Rhonda and Charlie drive for different lengths of time. Thus, the average must be weighted by the amount of time each person spent driving. Let's look at the solution. The setup uses the formula for the average speed. The average speed, recall, is the total distance driven over the total time driven. Charlie's distance is 90 miles per hour times 2 hours, which is 180 miles. Rhonda's distance is 60 times 3 equals 180. The total distance is that 180 plus 180 is 360. Recall that Charlie drove for 2 hours and Rhonda drove for 3 hours, and the total time is 3 plus 2, which equals 5. The average speed, therefore, is 360 over 5, which is 72. Medians and modes. So far in this section, we have worked with one type of an average called an arithmetic mean. However, there are other types of averages, the median and the mode. The median is the middle score in a group of scores. Half the scores are greater than the median, half the scores are less than the median. The mode is the most frequent score. How to find a median? Arrange all the scores from smallest to largest. You could arrange them from largest to smallest also, that doesn't matter. If there is an odd number of scores, the median is the middle score. If there is an even number of scores, add the two middle scores and divide by 2. Example 5. Given the scores 2, 1, 5, 9, 13, 21, 4, 1, 18, 1, 11, and 1, find the median and the mode. Arrange the terms from smallest to largest. When we do that, we have 4 1s, a 2, a 4, a 5, a 9, 11, 13, 18, and 21. Just as a hint, count the number of scores in the problem and then the number of the scores and the way you've arranged them to make sure that you didn't make a mistake. Since there are 12 terms an even number, the median is the average of the two middle terms. The median is 4 plus 5 divided by 2, which is 4.5. The mode is 1, which is the most common score. Example 5. The expressions 2x minus 1, x plus 3 and 3x minus 2 represent positive integers written in order from smallest to largest. If x is a positive integer greater than 1 and x plus 3 is the median, find a possible value of x. The possible answers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are two ways to solve this. The first is simply to plug the multiple choice answers into the expressions until you find one that makes sense. On a timed test, this is probably the best choice. You can also play with the inequalities 2 at a time. By the conditions of the problem, 2x minus 1 is less than x plus 3. Solving the inequality gives x is less than 4. Therefore, whatever answer we choose must be less than 4. Now compare the inequalities x plus 3 and 3x minus 2. Solving that inequality gives 5 halves is less than x, or x must be greater than 2.5, and from the previous part of this example, it has to be less than 4. The only possible choice is C, which is x equals 3. Example 7. There are 5 consecutive integers, the median of which is 30. What is the largest of the integers? Draw a diagram to help you. We've drawn 5 blanks, and in the middle blank we've put 30. And we can, because they're consecutive integers, we just have to count up 30. The blank to the right of 30 will be 31. The blank to the right of that will be 32. Therefore, the largest consecutive integer is 32. Here are some practice problems for you to try. Pause the DVD after each problem. When you have solved it, come back to check your answer. Practice problem 1. Rhonda's twin sister Nadine is a math whiz. Her scores on the 4 tests are 93, 98, 89, and 96. If 90% is an A, what is the lowest score Nadine can make on the 5th test and keep her A average? The answer is 74. Nadine's scores of 93, 98, 89, and 96 add to 376. To get at least a 90, all of her scores must add to 450. Recall that we obtain the figure 450 by multiplying the average Nadine wants, which is 90, by the number of tests, which is 5. The equation is x plus 376 equals 450. Subtracting 376 from both sides of the equation gives us 74. Practice problem 2. Micah's math teacher gives him 4 sets of logic problems for homework. On the first set, he scored 92. His next 2 scores were 78 and 97. What must the score on his 5th assignment be for him to have at least a 90 on these assignments? The answer to practice problem 2 is 93. Because he wants at least a 90 and there are 4 assignments, the sum of scores is 90 times 4, which is 360. The equation is 92 plus 78 plus 97 plus x equals 360. The 3 scores that we do know add to 267. The equation becomes 267 plus x equals 360. When we subtract 267 from both sides, we find that x equals 93. Practice problem 3. The average of w, x, y, and z is 36. The average of wx is 12. What is the average of y and z? The answer is 60. Recall that your first step is to find the sum of scores. The sum of w plus x plus y plus z is their average, which is 36, times the number of scores, which is 4, and that equals 144. Because the average of w and x is 12, the sum of scores must be 12 times 2, which is 24. Therefore, the sum of y and z is 144 minus 24, which is 120. Because we want to find the average of y and z, and there are 2 scores, we divide the sum of scores 120 by 2 to get an average of 60. Practice problem 4. The average of E, F, G, and H is 100. The average of G and H is 25. What is the average of E and F? The answer is 175. The sum of E, F, G, and H is the average, which is 100, times the number of scores, which is 400. Since the average of G and H is 25, the sum of scores must be 25 times 2, which is 50. The sum of E and F is therefore 400 minus 50, which equals 350. The average is 350 divided by 2, which is 175. Practice problem 5. Joshua plays hockey on a travel team. He plays a series of 10 games. In 3 of the games, he scores no goals. In 4 games, he scores 3 goals, and in 3 of the games, he scores 5 goals. What is the average number of goals he scores per game? This is a weighted average problem, and the average is 2.7 goals per game. There were 3 games in which he scored 0 points, so that's 3 times 0. There were 4 games in which he scored 3 points, and that's 4 times 3 is 12. And there were also 3 games in which he scored 5 points. Adding those up is 3 times 0 plus 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 5 times 3, which is 15, and that's 27 over 10 because that's the number of games, and that was 2.7. Practice problem 6. Grandpa used to build race cars and once drove in a NASCAR race. He loves to speed. Grandma has never built race cars, never driven in a NASCAR race, and hates to speed. Grandpa drives for 2 hours at 92 miles per hour. After 2 hours of listening to Grandma say, "Lowell, slow down," Grandpa gets mad and tells her to drive. She drives at 60 miles per hour for 4 hours. What is the average speed for the entire trip? The answer to practice problem 6 is 70 2/3 miles per hour. Remember to use a weighted average because Grandma and Grandpa drove for different lengths of time. The total distance is the distance driven by Grandpa plus the distance driven by Grandma. Grandpa's distance is 92 times 2, which is his miles per hour times the number of hours, and that's 184. Grandma's distance is her average miles per hour, which is 60, times the number of hours she drove, which is 4, that's 240. The total distance, therefore, is 184 plus 240, which is 424. We divide 424 by the total time driven, which is 6, for an answer of 70 2/3 miles per hour. Practice problem 7. What is the median of the following numbers? 2, 5, 3, 7, 17, 4, and 2. What is the mode? In this problem, the median is 4, the mode is 2. Arrange the scores from smallest to largest. In order, they are 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 17. This is an odd number of scores. Hence, the median is the middle number, which is 4. Since 2 is the most common score, it is the mode. Practice problem 8. Find the mean, median, and mode of the following figures. We're given the price of a house and the number of houses that sold at that price. The arithmetic mean is 110,500. The median price of the home is 77,500. Half of the houses cost less than this figure, and half cost more. To find the median, we are arranging the prices from smallest to largest. 30,000, 30,000. We have 3 scores of 35,000, 2 scores of 120,000, 1 score of 200,000, 2 scores of 250,000. There are an even number of scores, which is 10. Therefore, we average the two middle numbers. The two middle numbers are, or the two middle scores rather, are 35,000 and 120,000. These two add to 155,000. Dividing that figure by 2 gives 77,500. The mode is 35,000 because more houses, which is 3, sell at this price than at any other price. Practice problem 9. If 2x minus 5, x plus 1, and 3x minus 5 are integers written in order from smallest to largest, and x plus 1 is the median, what is the possible value of x? We're given 5 choices: a equals 3, b equals 4, c equals 7, d equals 8, and e equals 9. The answer to practice problem 9 is B. Obviously, the easiest way is to substitute the multiple choice answers into the conditions of the problem, but I'm going to give you the long way, just so you know, and it's a learning experience. Let's compare the two inequalities, 2x minus 5 and x plus 1. We know from the conditions of the problem that 2x minus 5 is less than x plus 1. Solving for x tells us that x is less than 6. Now compare x plus 1 and 3x minus 5. We know from the conditions of the problem that x plus 1 is less than 3x minus 5. Rearranging the terms of the inequality gives us 2x is less than negative 6, or x is greater than 3. There are only two integers that fit these requirements, 4 and 5. However, 5 is not one of the multiple choice answers where 4 is. Practice problem 10. The median of 7 consecutive integers is 9. What is the smallest of the integers? The answer to practice problem 10 is 6. 6 is the smallest integers. Look at the diagram below. We have 7 integers, the median is 9, and we're told that they're consecutive. Therefore, all we have to do is count down 9, 8, 7, 6, and the smallest integer will be 6.